Let's talk a little bit about factors. What exactly is a factor? For example, the number 10, what are the factors of 10? We're making a factor tree maybe. 2 times 5. So things that multiply together are factors to give a product of 10. So when we're doing polynomials or quadratics and things, we'll say factor this. We're saying what time what makes this when I multiply it together. So this will be x plus 3 and x plus 4. So these two things, that one and that one, are the factors, just like 2 and 5 are the factors of 10. And it makes sense then, hopefully, that I can take my 10, divide it by one of its factors to get the other factor. So if I divide it by 2, I would get 5. So 10 divided by one factor gives the other. The same is true for these quadratics or any polynomial. So in this section, we're going to learn how to do this division with these polynomials. But before that, let's talk about what we call these factors again. So the x plus 3, that is a factor. If I set it equal to 0 and solve for x, I get negative 3. And I could do the same with the other factor. Set it equal to 0 and solve for this x, get negative 4. So these numbers, negative 3 and negative 4, are called zeros or roots or solutions. Okay, so if I give you the roots, you should be able to work backwards to tell me the quadratic that it came from. So let's do that. Suppose x is equal to negative 3 and negative 4. These are my two solutions, or my zeros. How do I work backwards to get it? Well, I know that I set the factor equal to 0 and solved in order to get these numbers. So I can say x equals negative 3, add 3 to both sides, make it equal to 0, and there is my factor. So remember this idea. X minus a is a factor, where a is a root or 0. Okay, so negative 4. If I take my negative 4, if I say x minus my a value of negative 4, then I can make a factor out of that, right? So x minus minus gives me x plus 4. So there's one root. Here's the other root. So either way you want to do it, I would do it this way. It's just quicker. X minus either one of these numbers gives you a factor. Then we can multiply these back together. X squared plus 4x plus 3x plus 12. Combine the like terms, and we get the original quadratic. Recall that 10 divided by one of its factors gave me the other factor, right? Well, what if we only knew one factor of our polynomial? What if we only knew that negative 3 was one of them? How would I find the other? Well, x minus the negative 3, which will make x plus 3, tells me that x plus 3 is the factor. So all I need to do is take my polynomial, x squared plus 7x plus 12, and divide it by x plus 3. And whatever I get as an answer, hopefully that's going to be x plus 4, because we already know that's what it is, will be the other factor. Let's review long division right quick. So we look at the 3 and try to put it into the 1, but the 1's too small. So we'll put it into 12. It goes 4 times. Then we multiply the 3 and 4 and put that product here, and then we subtract. So 12 minus 12 is nothing. Bring down the next number, 9, and repeat the process. 3 goes into 9 3 times. Put it here. Then we'll multiply the 3 times 3, you get 9. Subtract again. We got 0, so we know it goes evenly because we had a remainder of 0. Okay, so let's do the same thing here. So we have 2 pieces here for the factor, so it needs to go into these 2 pieces of the quadratic. what you need to do is think x times what will give me x squared, or x squared divided by x. What is that? That is x. So x goes here, and then we multiply this x times the x plus 3. So x times x squared, x times 3, a positive 3x. This is why we did the little division, because we needed for these two things here to be the exact same thing. Because when we now subtract this stuff, this needs to come down to a 0 right there, which it does. And then 7 minus 3x gives me 4x. Then I'll bring down the 12, or plus 12. And now I'm going to repeat. I got to think in my head, x here times what will give me 4x? Well, multiply times 4, so I'll put a plus 4. Multiply 4 and x together, and we'll get, 4x. And then 4 times 3 gives me 12. I'll subtract, I get remainder of 0. So there it is. It went evenly, and that's my other factor. So these two factors multiply together to give me that quadratic. Now recall, we call these numbers zeros, like negative 3 was a 0. This means that f of negative 3 should equal to nothing. Let's check it. So x squared plus 7x plus 12 with a negative 3 for my x value. We're finding out what negative 3, f of negative 3 is equal to. All right, so negative 3 times negative 3 is 9. 7 times negative 3 is a negative 21 plus 12. And indeed, this equals to 0. Now, the long division is not fun. So we're really not going to do that. It was just a tool for us to see what's going on. We're going to do what's called synthetic division, because it will give the same answer with a little less work. Now this is just a little bit different than what the book does, but it's more efficient, so that's why I like it. So what you do is take all the coefficients of my polynomial here and write them across the top. So my x squared, I got 1x squared. I got 7x, and then the number that has no variables next to it, the constant value, goes there. Now, what number am I going to see goes into this evenly? If I want to check x plus 3, I want to know, is that a factor of this guy? Well, if that's a factor, remember the root would actually be a negative 3. So let's check a negative 3, and we'll plug that right here. This is how you set everything up. Once it's set up, here are the steps. This 1 will always drop down, and you do nothing but just drop it down. It doesn't add, subtract, multiply, it just drops down. Whatever that number is, it happens to be a 1. If it was a 4, it would still drop down and be a 4. After that, you're going to multiply and add. So multiply the negative 3 and the 1 together. That gives me negative 3. Then I'll add that negative 3 to the 7, which would give me, a 4. And then I'll repeat. Multiply the negative 3 times 4 gives me negative 12. Add that product to the next number. 12 plus negative 12 is 0. You want to get a 0 here. That means that's your remainder, okay? So what do we have here? What's the answer, really? Okay, so this 1 and this 4, that's your coefficients to your answer. So this one right here was an x squared term. It came from that guy right there, okay? So my answer got divided by an x, so it lost 1x, or one of its power, so it went down to first power. So this right here is 1x to the first power, or just x. And then 4 plus 4. So there's my answer. So that indeed is a root, because it had a remainder of 0, and this was the answer to that division. So those are my two factors.